This episode is brought to you by Henry the Adjuster. Honesty when you need it the most.
Found ways to get money to go to those schools that were already in good zip codes. They should have been finding ways to get monies to those lower end zip codes, but they, like you said, the grading system was failing those kids who were underperforming. Instead of getting them resources, you kept removing the resources and then shutting the schools down and giving them less options of where to go to schools. So I think it's kind of, go ahead.
Yeah, just look at a little bit of the history of the school system in Florida, right?
Mhm.
First, they had standardized testing,
Mhm.
right? I don't know if they still do that or not, but I know I remember that when I was in school.
No, it is still is.
It is, right? And didn't the schools get funded more on better testing?
Correct.
Okay, so now you're setting up people that are in better areas that are for better education to have more funding. Then we went to a school grading system where an A, B, C, D, E, F school, whatever the hell it was.
Mhm.
So now you're graded kids on attendance, their grades, and certain other qualifications
Mhm.
that again lean towards people that or areas that are more affluent,
Correct.
right?
Mhm.
So the state of Florida has completely failed the school system across the board.
I mean, the country is really failing across the board, but
Yeah.
yes, Florida included.
And then our education sucks. I mean, I moved here from New York when I was 9 years old,
Mhm.
and I didn't learn another thing till I was like 10th grade. I was so far advanced from 9 years
Same
old,
thing. I moved here from Jamaica. Same experience.
right? So, now the states turn around and doing school choice, parent choice, which I think is great, right? You
Right.
should have a choice of where you want to educate your kids, and you should have a choice to bring your kids to safe places.
Mhm.
The problem with all this is, in my opinion, you don't have enough schools to support all this movement. And then you're going to be emptying out schools how are you going to fill those schools back up?
I think it's incumbent upon the school district to be creative on how to get those schools.
Mhm.
Be creative. You tell these kids all the time in these project-based things. Be creative. Figure out how to solve these problems. Well,
I don't, and the reality of it is, I don't think that people would empty out because, like, first of all, if they take the voucher and go to a school that's already full, then they're going to default, right, and stay near home. There's another option is that, like, a lot of people think, like, they might not value education as much, and so they are just going to leave their kid where they are.
Mhm.
And also remember that a school near home is easier to get to. If
That's
they have
right.
to cross town to go to another school and send their kid there, it might be out of their way.
Well,
But
I
if it's
think
like someplace that's like close to their work, maybe they can, couple the trip and make that work.
I
But
think
like
that plays
all
a
in all,
factor in
I
this.
think there's so many different factors that will have a parent actually utilize this. So
Mhm.
the fact that it passed is good because then
Mhm.
we now know what the reality would be. Now, there were arguments with me about like, like Bill was thinking, like schools are full, or I mean, I think Mo, you just mentioned that, like schools at full capacity, some schools don't have people or whatever. The thing
Mhm.
is, like, there has to be a wait list, and once that funding starts to kick in, then the schools will expand, or
Mhm.
the schools might take over certain schools nearby that are not doing well and start developing those schools. So the whole point is like using capitalism as, the mechanism to improve education.
I
Because
think
people
it's
will want to
absolutely right.
compete. People will want to compete for students.
Right.
I think it's good. I like that parents have choice, right? I
Mhm.
like that we have a choice to do what's best
About
for our
time.
kid, right? That part is good, but I don't know how far they looked into what can happen to these underserved areas. Because parents, look, there's a lot of parents that want their kids to get a good education. And I think I read somewhere in this bill, there's going to be transportation modes to get these kids there.
Mhm.
So we have to look deeper into that. But I think I
I
read
think
somewhere
I
in
think
there.
eventually these schools are going to have to filter children out through like entrance exams.
Well, maybe, but maybe some of these underserved schools should become magnet
Especially if the
schools.
school has stronger academics than others, they're going to want to keep that standard up, right? Because by bringing in, whether it be athletes or whatnot, I mean, this is going to be like college, right?
Mhm.
Everybody pays for college, so to get into a good college, there's a application system
Mhm.
or process.
Well, but this is public schools that are being paid for by taxes.
No, public schools, I mean, they're gonna have
Which is why
to,
they should all be competitive.
yeah, they're gonna be
And they're
competitive,
not.
and at the end of the day, it's going to be, that's gonna be the case. Now,
Mhm.
what I am actually concerned with is what happens in Thailand, right? In Thailand, the public schools are the best schools, right? The public schools, I stress, the public schools are the best schools. The private schools are schools that parents have to pay money for to get in because their kid couldn't get in anywhere else. And they have a whole examination system going. Now, the problem with that is like one of the top high schools in Thailand, what they do is they have like out of like 40 classrooms of like 50 students each or something like that. They have 5 rooms set aside for people who want to donate to the school. So whoever donates more gets their kid in just for prestige. So that's what's going to end up happening is is there a way to not facilitate this corruption going on, right? At the same time, still maintaining like a good standard of education. So that's my little take on it.
I
Because
mean,
like that's what's going to happen, right? So you're going to get like people competing for certain schools because they're so good and they
Mhm.
want their kid to have that education. Then who chooses? If there's no clear standard as to how it's being chosen, right? Maybe the state comes up with an exam or I don't know, and they have to perform a certain level of score, and that score then is officially given like an SAT, then that kid gets to go to that school or qualifies for it, and then they wait list, right? That's a fair system. But
Listen,
when it starts to come to like like my dad's name is Bill Reicherter, right? He can pay like 50 grand for me to go to the school. So Bill donates like a whole library and then like I get in, like that. That's what's
but
going to end up happening.
I think
So
we should make that a non-factor and like kind of make that a thing where people can't do that.
but
right. So those are the things that I think Bill was talking about. Like, I mean, looking a little bit further from
Mhm.
just, giving out vouchers and doing ESAs. And
Mhm.
my question is like, now that you're giving out vouchers of $8,000, please tell me what school is going to cost less than that.
None. The public schools are going to cost less
And
than
so
that.
the idea of Paul Renner talking about the ESAs, right?
Mhm.
This educational savings account, there's nothing left to put in that darn ESA because all the schools are going to charge more money. It's like that tax credit for electric cars, right?
Mhm.
And then the next thing you know, they jack up the price for the electric car. You end up paying something and you get your tax credit like already swallowed up. So like the minute the government pays something, like I'm saying like one kid, one student, okay, that's it, Like,
Mhm.
and here's the other thing. Who's managing this ESA? Like all the paperwork behind all this for somebody to filter that out in the healthcare system, they're private entities, right? That are managing this.
Mhm.
Like, do we have a private entity managing the ESAs, or is the government going to create another group of inside of the CFO's office to manage this ESA? Because I am seeing like a bigger government from that. So, I mean, my comment on school choice at the time was one voucher, the kid takes to the school, they sign off on it, done, right? Like a title for a car. Like, there you go, take it. Go spend it like crazy. Do whatever you want to do, right? And and we're done.
Mhm.
No more transactions needed. Like right now, this ESA is going to cause a whole bunch of other paperwork and administrative work,
I
and it's
think
going to
that's
cost money.
I think that's something that I agree with you on that, Lynn. They should probably do away with that because it's going to create a little bit more chaos in trying to because who's going to manage it? What exactly are they managing it?
Mhm.
What exactly are they managing? Because again, what school is going to cost less than $8,000?
I
So
don't see it happening. Yeah.
matter of fact, I think because of that voucher, most schools currently kind of have it there because they know kids have access to it.
Exactly.
And I'm talking about these are some really crappy private schools. So just because it's a private school does not make it prestigious. These are just
Right.
people that put together a school in the church somewhere. It's like $8,000 to go here. Here's a uniform.
But private schools are not 8,000 though. The
Right.
likelihood is like, over 10,000 or
Oh yeah, no,
$20,000,
a
right?
prestigious private school. I'm talking about ones that knew they can get the
Oh
voucher.
my God, a friend of mine was gonna send his twins, two twin boys, to private school. It was gonna cost him like 34,000 each.
Yeah.
That's
It's
a
like
good private school.
college. I
That's a
didn't
good
even pay
private
that.
school.
I didn't pay that much. I mean, when, you know what I mean? If I were to
And
go
that's
to
like
a
lower
private school,
school. That's
I
lower
didn't even go to
school.
a private university. No, this is like a high end, like it's a very hard school to get into, and
Mhm.
they use the money as the benchmark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, the best things in life cost money.
yeah,
Not necessarily
exactly.
the best education. It is,
Exactly. Yeah.
Not
It's just
necessarily right.
but,
Right.
yeah.
the problem I see with all this is, again, it's like anything else in government. You put a bunch of lawyers together, they sit there and they create all these grand plans, but there's no real business strategy behind it.
No.
There's no like, how is this gonna work? What's, there's no, here's the plus, here's the minus, how are we gonna make these things come together? What are we gonna do if these schools get overcrowded? How are we gonna, what's the benchmarks that we're gonna set in place? Because when they put the law out, right, this law should have all of these benchmarks in it, so that everybody's clear on how all this is gonna work.
Mhm.
Just making school choice and parents' rights available
I'm
now.
wondering if this is actually the job of the Education Commission. So now
Well,
that they pass a law and say, okay, look, you know what? We're going to give every parent of every child that goes to school from K through 12 a voucher,
yeah,
right? Now go work it out, right? The
okay, well,
Education Commission then decides like how the process and all that works.
isn't that backwards?
Yes.
Shouldn't that be worked out first, then the law?
No, I'm pretty sure that they should have talked about this before. But then,
Right.
like, the bill is just like the House just approves funding, right? So anything that is appropriated to somewhere. So then they decide and vote on it. But like how of the process actually goes through like the Education Commission.
Again, and
I
that's
think
all
there should have
wrong.
been tiers to this.
This is why
Right.
government screws everything up,
Mhm.
because they don't have an answer before they have the bill.
Or I think there should have been tiers to this because again, for me personally, like you said before, Bill, private school does not mean that it's guaranteed good education. So I think as a parent, if I know like maybe a mile and a half down the road, there's a good school that my kid could go to that I can't get to because I live a mile and a half away. If I have the option just to go to that school, that makes me happy. You know what I'm saying? So I think in tiers it should say, okay, what's feasible for the kids? Why, there should be a process to just say, okay, why do you want to move your kid to another school versus just every kid has the option to leave his school and go to another school with this voucher. I think there should have been levels to this, and I don't think the legislation worked this out yet. But it's good to know. In my opinion, I think it's good that they're stepping in the right direction. But I think there should have been other things to stop the chaos that may, be ensued from
Well,
people just throwing their
I
kids
agree.
around the system.
I agree, but if you just look at our government as a whole, from state to federal, all these programs they put in place, there's a thought, right? But there's no plan on
Right.
the action and the reaction,
Mhm.
right? It's just a great plan in somebody's mind, and they put together the whole plan. But then how does this plan get implemented? And how are we going to handle backlash over here? How are we going to set standards? How are we going, look, this is why our government is so screwed up, because there's no, it's a circle that just
Yep.
keeps running in circles. There's no clear end in sight for anything that they put in place. And that's why these bills create more chaos, in my opinion.
I think
You
they
need
create
people
problems
in
just
there.
to have reasons to get voted in.
Yeah, you need people in there that if we're gonna put a bill like this together, I think school choice is absolutely incredible. I think it's great. I think parental rights are great. I think parents should have the say of how their kids get educated.
Mhm.
But I also think there needs to be some sort of law and order of how it's going to be done, so that a year from now, when this is all moving forward, and you have a bunch of kids
No,
coming in.
but here, watch this, right? So the Education Commission is like Florida based. So those are big policies. What's going to end up happening is going to differ between Miami-Dade school boards, Broward, every single county is going to have their own rules.
Yeah.
And that's where the chaos happens. Now, remember that we're kind of we're trying to duplicate the republic, the republic type of constitutional, republic, right? So everybody is their own entity, and therefore there is no common theme.
Right.
So whatever's happening in Miami-Dade school boards is going to happen in Miami-Dade school boards. And then it's going to be like this with Broward, with, Palm Beach, with God knows, Sarasota, like Jacksonville. It is going to be
Monterey.
like that. And nobody's
Right.
going to have the same thing. And we're going to have to look, they don't even go on holiday the same day in the state of Florida. Right. So
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a free for all.
Or
and
keep
it's-
up with the same types of thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Lynn.
no, and my point is that, like, okay, so standing inside of like individual freedom, right? So we have Miami-Dade School Board. The point of having them is for them to manage whatever's going on in the county. And it's the same with, all the other counties. So that's going to be quite an issue. And then there's an interpretation that may vary from the law that has been passed,
Mhm.
right?
Again.
But
the
what
state
I'm
should put
saying is,
down the
like,
guidelines.
yeah, so I mean that's going to be an issue. So that without having the state to get too much into the details of it, it's like, here, this is what the state's going to do with the money that we got, right? The money that we got, and the money part of the schools are coming from our taxes from the county as well. So I mean, you got to think about the source of the money, right? The source of the money goes city, county, and state, right? So part of that county money is going to schools.
Mhm.
So of course they're going to have the schools dictate how that is going to be spent. So that's my take on it. I'm thinking, like, it's impossible to have like one system that works for everybody, because it might not. And like Miami-Dade County being as big as it is, right? I mean, like, it's like basically the whole peninsula right before, you go to Monroe County. It's huge. I mean, to get from one side to the next side, it's like almost 2.5 hours.
Mhm.
And we're not even like going diagonal, or just going across. You know what I mean? Like, with traffic and everything else. So I mean, it's a huge county. It's got like 3 million people. It's not, an easy feat. So it's right that they're having everybody manage their own thing. But I mean, there has to be something that's not going to misinterpret the law, and that it's followed, right? But like, as far as ESA goes, like, that's something that I think is going to open a whole new can of worms. Because I asked people about this, they want ESAs, and I said, like, what's the ESA? Like,
Makes no
who's
sense.
managing the ESA? Who's going to
makes no sense.
verify all these costs are actually school related?
Mhm.
Right? Because they have to verify that. And the people who are taking the ESAs have to register their company. I mean, like, this whole administrative BS that is going to be created from an ESA is a nightmare.
Mhm.
It's the same nightmare that we have with HSAs. So
Yeah.
like, the state wants to be easy and done. Look, everybody gets a voucher. You get it mailed to you, or you get it electronically received. And then, like, you take that, you go to the school, you register it. And if it works, then fine. You sign your name off, and here you go. And then they go cash in, and that's it. Done.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
agree.
simplify it. And then, like, okay, these schools, they take the money and then they manage it themselves. If they see that they have a long waiting list, and if they increase another classroom, another 2 classrooms, right? Maybe they can use a different location, or I don't know, I mean, maybe they could turn in the janitor's closet into another classroom. Like, who knows, right? Like, and teachers don't need cafeterias anymore. It's just like, we're using the teacher's break room for school. I mean, like, do it. And then, like, expand accordingly, set up a shed. Who cares? I don't know. As
Listen,
long as it's a safe environment for kids to learn in, like, adapt, grow and expand. And then,
I
like,
think. Go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, and he was talking about 9,000 autistic kids that are turned away, right?
Mhm.
Like, this is an opportunity for people to want to, like, open a school that is specifically special to autistic children. And you can't take a lot of these students, right? So,
No.
I mean, like, in every region and every county, there should be more funding for this kind of stuff too, just to serve that group, that special needs group.
Mhm. There'd be more Dan Marino campuses around here, because I mean, that's ultimately that's a school that I like, and if there were more schools like that, then we'd be able to cater to the needs of those students.
Right, and
think
Dan
it,
Marino can expand, right? So that way he's
yeah.
investing in the schools, and then the state has nothing to do with it. They're just approving this money that is like piled up over there that needs to be, that always gets to be spent on students.
We
And
need
I
to get
think
you in the
like,
state capitol. We need to get you up there and straighten this out.
man, I tell you, we just want stuff to work.
That's
I
it,
mean,
man.
that's it.
Make it simple, make it work.
Yeah.
Don't overcomplicate this.
I seriously, I mean, I've always been against the ESA. I mean, I think it's great, but I think that parents should be able to save money into an ESA and have it like privately managed, where the parents have to put in a certain amount for the account to be free, right? Then the private companies that are managing this ESA, like they can put away money, a maximum of however much per year, so that they can put it towards books, tuition,
Uniforms,
tutoring,
whatever. Yeah, tutoring.
exams, fucking college applications, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is that they want to spend it on that is like legit. Then it's managed by a, you know, another private entity. So that's out of the government, right? I don't want the government be managing nobody's ESA, you know, program. And I don't know if they've already set that up though. So I mean, I couldn't say.
Well, I guess we'll learn more as this thing rolls
But I
out.
think if parents could put that away, and then like, you know, it's also something that should be, you know, like your HSA also gets invested, right? Like invested in mutual funds or whatnot. So that the parents that are saving money for their kids' college have that time to grow that money and have it be available for their kids to go to college if their kids want to.
See,
right?
that sounds positive.
Yeah. So I
That
mean
sounds like a plus.
that's the only thing I see why an ESA should be available, but not available because of the vouchers, because the vouchers like have
Doesn't
it
make any sense.
end.
Yeah.
Yeah, have it end. Like give the voucher done. The state should announce every year how much that is, and like they should be required to announce their tuition too, right? And like there has to be like some kind of limitation to the increase of because like now that public
Kinda like rent.
schools current like public schools that are losing their funding, that 20%, they're going to try to make up for it by jacking up their pricing, right? Unless the government is going to like cap it and say like this is what you have to manage. But currently what they have in their mind is $7,000 per student. And now that the state has increased to 8, it's 8. Public schools are not going to charge you any less. It's just, you know, that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
All right, I talked enough.
All right, so we got a few more minutes that we want to. After that, I think we should wrap it up because it's going to be.
Yeah, no, I just think that as anything the government does, it's thought out, but not well thought out.
Agree.
And then they have to backtrack later on when they could have just took care of it all. Because right now it seems to me like we're trying to rush a bunch of bills through. Right? I mean, they're just one after another popping out of there, right? So there should be more, it should be on the docket. It should be something that's thought out more. I think there should be more collaboration between, you know, the school boards, Department of Education, or whoever is going to run this thing. And I'm not involved in any of these meetings, obviously, because I'm not in Tallahassee, but just the way it rolls out and we see the bill tells me that there's a lot of open holes in this thing that really should have been thought out more before it was rolled out and signed off. And well, it's not signed off yet, but ready for sign off. Because why do you want to deal with this again when things start backfiring?
Yeah, you're right. It sounds good, but it just
It's like
sounds.
business, right?
No, so I mean, I hear what you're saying, Bill, and what I see is I see that like a good bill, a good concept can actually go obsolete really quickly when there's backlash.
Yeah.
Right. Versus like having a sound system, or I mean, like, you know, like a real process going, seeing all the possibilities and all the mishaps that could be in the process, and then passing a bill. But I mean, like I said, I think that I know that Manny Diaz is a huge stand for school choice. I mean, like while I was campaigning, every single school choice event, he was always there. So he's a big proponent of it. I'm pretty sure that all of this had been architected out already, but we just don't know what the process is. And of course, the big news is always like a new bill is signed and then there's controversy. Also, to pass a bill, there is always, I mean, good thing in Florida, we have like the bill is the bill, right? It's not like the bill and a bunch of pork underneath with a bunch of other things like that, like, you know, research of frogs in the Amazon. You know what I mean? Like gay frogs in the Amazon. I mean, there's none of that. I mean, and our big bills, you'll see this, right? Millions of dollars in our federal funding goes to like some nonsense like that. Anyway, so but I mean, in Florida, our bill is our bill. This bill is specifically to this, and that's it. Nothing else included, right? Unless they wanted to pass. Remember, there was like offshore drilling and no vaping indoors. Like, how are they related again? I don't know. But anyway, so the no offshore drilling was coupled with like no vaping indoors. It was because they wanted to please both sides of the aisle to pass that bill. So I mean, same thing with that, right? Same issue is like maybe some of these things are meant to be obscure because it pacifies the other side to allow this bill to pass. And this is what I think that's the biggest problem with government, right? It's like you manipulate the passing of a bill by adding or subtracting clarity from the bill.
Yeah.
And, you know, until we stop doing that, we don't have efficiency because there's always room for interpretation. Right? Yeah. And it's not effective. I mean, it's just not.
I would just like to see our government do things to in other words, I'd like to see our government just try to make these bills 100% when they're signed off, right? So that there's not all these backlashes going on, because there will be backlashes, but it just seems to me that things just get rushed through, right? And then we deal with all the problems, and then both sides split, and then we have, when we're running for elections and we're doing things that how much this is killing us and this is killing us. Like, when you run a business, you can't run a successful business this way. And if our government ran like a successful business, I think we'd have a lot more successes in this state or the country. But when you run it haphazardly, this is what you get. A bunch of nonsense. And then you got to figure it all out, and you got to deal with all the issues. And then, you know, you have internal fighting, and then you have, it's just, I don't know. I just think a lot of things need to change in our government when it comes to how we roll things out. And, you know, we're all excited about this bill. It's going to do this. Yes, there's a lot of great things in this bill. But what about the aftermath of what this bill can bring in? Has that been addressed? What's it going to cost?
What I'm thinking of is like the amount of increase in traffic from people like commuting to schools. I mean, when I was a kid, we just like woke up, walked, got to school, done, right?
Well, you're in Thailand.
Not causing.
You guys
No, I was here. What are you talking about?
Little boats going to school.
You're so funny.
Anyways,
like the traffic that's going to happen outside of this, the commuting that the parents are going to do, right? It depends on everybody's situation. And also, you know, I mean, like, you got to think about there are parents that can't that send their kids to a boys and girls club, right? After school until they're done with work and pick them up. So like they also don't want to live too far away from that, because if the boys and girls, you know what I mean? There's like so many little different things. Yeah. So many little different things. And the school bus issue, if there's still only having school bus drivers with no aid and nobody to stop fighting in the buses, like what's going on with that, right? So all of this is like a whole big chunk of
you're going to see they're going to have to redirect school buses. They're going to have certain school buses picking up to bring to certain schools. They don't have enough of all that infrastructure. That's what I'm saying. We're
waiting for Kamala's electric school bus.
Sounds like the magic school bus. No, but
that's why
anyway,
I say
I think transportation is going to be the big glue here. The glue here.
Yeah.
If you can't take your kid to that school, then I think they should leave transportation out of it. Transportation not included. If you want your kid to go to this school, you got to take them to that school. No,
I think so too.
And that's the best way to kind of like limit a lot of these issues that we would have with school choice.
Again, that's all. I think that's great, but these are things that should be outlined in the bill.
Hopefully it is.
Process. There has to be process to have success. right?
So school bus is actually free?
No,
No, it's not. And they've
How
got
much
to
do
be,
you have to pay? I don't have kids,
no,
so.
it's part of the tax bill.
yeah,
Everybody chips in for the school bus.
and that's why they can't really stretch them thin to kind of.
No,
move
so that's
from
what I'm
that school to
saying.
that
So
school.
like if somebody lives close to home, they're not taking advantage of that. So I mean, are they gonna get the credit back? So my
No.
question is like, did they split up this whole thing, right? Like here's education, here's school bus, right? Your school bus enables you to travel like within 20 miles. One allows you to travel 50 miles. It costs more. I mean, you know what I mean? Like there's I
mean,
don't know.
my kids don't take school buses. I don't know if I get my money back because of that.
I don't know, but what
But-
I'm saying is if we're doing this voucher thing,
Mhm.
like they should split that out because that's going to be a big proponent of whether a child goes to another school or not, right?
Mhm.
So, and the state loves to run business at a loss, which is unlike, like Bill was saying, like we don't, we're not running this like a business.
Mhm.
So when I went to school in Thailand and I needed a school bus, we had to pay extra for the school bus. So, it's like
I did
not
it
the
when
same part
my
of
kids went to
tuition.
private school. We had to pay for the school bus extra.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how it should be. And then like if we're doing public school buses, then it has to be safe. Either that or the state should set some kind of budget and make it private. Make the whole school bus issue private.
I don't know. I think school buses should stay exactly where they are, paid for by the tax dollars, go to the school zones that they're supposed to go to. And for those parents who say that their kid deserves an education better, they need to pull their weight in and invest their time and drop them off at school and pick them up from school. It's not impossible. I think that's
Well, when you get
one-
to the high school level and they can start driving to school, then you have a whole nother
then
dynamic.
they exactly.
Where are you gonna put all these cars in the parking lots? The schools aren't.
There
barely
you go,
doing it right
yeah.
now.
Exactly, because I mean, if you look at school drop off and parent pickup now, I mean, parents do that now, picking their kids up, dropping their kids off. Only kids that really do that are kids that need to take the bus. And I think again, if you want your kid to go to a school that they're not zoned for, now that they have the option to in the state of Florida, you should drive. Otherwise, and that way the school that's now zoned for them doesn't have to worry about losing kids because again, that part.
Well, I mean, okay, so when you actually give choice, you really want to give the whole freedom, right? You're not giving the freedom by manipulating.
Yeah, but I'm not
certain
gonna pay
things.
for your freedom too. Like I'll give you the
No,
choice
but what
to
I'm
go.
saying
but
is like,
get
because
there.
because schools are like school buses,
Mm-hmm.
and this is like we're totally digressing off into the issue of school bus here. But what I'm saying about school buses is like depending on the distance you have from your home and the routing, right? There should be like, I mean, like my school bus would pick me up in front of my house.
Mhm.
So my caretaker would take me to the school bus, hand me off to the aide, and then like I off to school I go. And then like the school picks up whoever they pick up along the route. And it's the same kids over every day, right? Then that's possible. And like I think, I don't know, like Bill said in high school, I mean, I think the most economical way for students, right, and safe way is to take the school bus. Especially the electric one.
The Kamala's magic school bus.
Anyway.